And we are live. JT here, and welcome to the huddle. The huddle is where I sit down with successful people from the world of sport and the world of coaching. It's to learn more about their journey to greatness. Why do I have these conversations? Because success always leaves clues. I want to take a moment to thank you, whether you are watching the replay on YouTube or whether you're listening to the audio on the podcast. Thank you so much for being here with me and my special guest today. And here's my friendly reminder to you. The mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's wide open. So my challenge to you is to go all in on this conversation, to remove any distractions and get laser focused on the here and the now. And I guarantee you, you will gain a valuable nugget of wisdom that will not only help you succeed in sport, but more importantly, in the game of life. Been looking forward to my conversation with my special guest today. We've had an opportunity over the last few months to have some conversation, to connect on a deeper level, and just really just talk about life and just really just enjoying each other's company. My guest in the huddle today is a Bishop Gators alum, and he's currently serving as the Community Sport Engagement Specialist with TYSN. My guest in the huddle today is Shane McDonald. How are you today, brother?
Hey, JT, I'm great. Thanks for having me on. Taking a look at the guests that you've had on this podcast, I'm honored. All the great coaches and leaders you've had on, and to jump in the huddle here, I'm excited.
Absolutely, and as a quarterback, you know how special that huddle is, and how some of the best conversations, some of the best connections you can make, happen within that tight circle, the huddle.
Yeah, and the football world is a small world up here in Canada, so
Yeah.
you're only one connection away of meeting some great people and starting some good conversations. So thanks for having me. I appreciate it. My first time doing something like this.
Absolutely, brother. Before we get kicked off, pun intended, I'm going to take a moment just to count my blessings. For me, it's a daily practice. Some days I do it better than others, but I do find those days where I'm most intentional, where I'm most consistent counting my blessings. I do find those days are filled with a little bit more love, a little bit more joy, a little bit more peace. And I'm a big believer, biggest blessing you can give anyone is your time and energy. So just want to thank you again for blessing us with some of your time and energy here today.
Absolutely, that's something I've learned to practice also recently, and I appreciate that to start the conversation. Um, yeah, where you place your attention is where you place your energy, and I'm here with you right now, JT. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So one of the first things that I like to do in the huddle is to remind myself and remind others that life is a game and games are supposed to be fun. I had a coaching colleague and a great friend who was actually one of my first mentors sort of remind me often that, we all have these things that make us unique and different. Our responsibility really is to celebrate them and share them with others. So I'm curious, what's a fun fact about you that maybe a lot of people don't know that you be open to sharing with our greater community today?
Yeah, great question. It does tie into sports, so I tried to think about this a little bit, but I'm a home renovation enthusiast, whether that's design or functionality or the actual physical work. Uh, my father did renovations and built kitchens and was part of that industry for his career, and I grew up with that. Very thankful to be in a home where take care of your things, and very grateful for that and the skills that are handed down through that and working part-time jobs um, as a kid growing up. Has led me to my adult life now of flipping my first house with my partner and kind of growing your home base, as I call it, for your family. So I take on a lot of different projects in my spare time, and take a lot of pride in having that home base, and I think that really ties into sport in a lot of ways. The more I reflect at it now, of you know, kind of the team building aspect of having a family and um, taking care of your things and kind of growing from that perspective.
Mm. It's interesting that you share that because as I was prepping for our conversation today, I did notice sort of like this diverse and unique sort of professional pathway where, you've obviously spent time coaching, which is obviously a passion of yours. You're in this new role as a community engagement specialist, but then you also, I did notice there's this, you can definitely tell there is this passion for just homes and you can tell that you're really handy and like to fix them up. I'm curious, beyond the team building aspect, is there anything that you have found within sort of this, let's just say properties, home ownership that you've found, I don't know, just bring something different to your life that say maybe is different than sport?
Well, seeing something that you can put your hands on and kind of create is something.
Yeah.
It is different from sport, but it's the same in many ways. So just having a vision and a project and being able to kind of fulfill that, and your time and effort and energy goes into it, and you kind of get out what you put into it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, something different than sport. Yeah, it's hard to say. I try to tie things back and try to lead my life in that way. But
Yeah.
yeah, like trying to have a vision, uh, then you have a budget, and then you have time constraints, and then you have all these different factors that can slow you down or speed you up.
Yeah.
That's a huge learning lesson. Trying to balance everything, family life, um, whether construction or home projects or whatever it may be. But also finding at the end of it, when you can build something and you can see it and you can share it, I think that's really special to me.
Yeah. It's interesting as you share that, right? Like hearing that, like that project management side, but it's funny how, if I was just listening there, it's funny how some of the things that you described there are very similar to the ebbs and flows, like of a football game, of a football season, right? It's just the ebbs and
Yeah.
flows, and you have a vision, a game plan, and then, okay, what do I need to execute on this play to get closer to the vision to execute the game plan? So it's really funny the parallels there.
Yeah, I think that's probably a personality trait or some
Yeah.
type of, way people operate or work. It's like I like having a project and an end goal. It's
Yeah.
similar to a football season versus, a monotonous task over and over again to see a final, reward versus like, having this, cycle of different projects and timelines. I think it definitely ties into sport, and again, how I was wired as a football player. Every August you come back to the same thing.
Yeah.
In November you end your story and start it all over again. I think that's something that I'm passionate about, trying to fulfill things in my life that way and trying to pass things on and share things with people. So life now as taking a pause from coaching into a role in sport. I definitely have that itch to have that season goal. So, for example, now we're working with the youth football season this in Ottawa um, as a partner. So at least I have that season ahead of me, and
Yeah.
I can kind of rewire myself a little bit to enjoy the moment and let people enjoy their seasons and share and help things with others, and try to pass on a little bit of knowledge and leadership towards that aspect of my life now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm curious from your perspective, as you were sharing there, your first part of your journey was as a high quality student athlete, right? And you talked about, you can definitely see that quarterback mindset, right? That ability to here's the vision. Okay, what do we need to do on this play to execute it? Then you quickly transition to becoming a high quality coach, like many student athletes do. Um, Beyond sort of like some of those lessons that we've already talked about, what would you say is a life lesson that you've taken from sport that you still find yourself applying to your life in other areas, especially as you transition into this new phase of your journey as kind of like an administrator, as someone who's trying to help grow the game on a greater scale?
Yeah, I've thought about this question this morning, and you kind of reflect back on your career and all the things you've been through, and you go, like, is my story that important? And then you go, you know what? Yes, like be gracious towards yourself. And when someone's open to asking you these things, I think I show pride in your past. So to answer your question, I think resiliency and patience are two things that come to mind through my journey because a little bit about my football background. It's a unique one, and I was a hockey player through and through the whole circuit growing up from age 5. My dad was an OHL hockey player, played for the Kitchener Rangers. So, that vision of hockey and the typical Canadian story is one of, oh my, like, I want to make it in sport, in hockey. It's the best thing ever. So, all the way up through AAA. Um, High school hockey, which was competitive back in the 2000s in my area in the Durham region. So I went to Uxbridge Secondary School, and my hockey dream kind of got cut off pretty quickly, at that grade 10, 11 age group where are you making it to the next level? The kids that are really good have already made it. So you're kind of hanging on to, where is my hockey career going? So that's probably a similar theme that many kids go through now, um, where you get recognized at a young age or you don't. So, as that in betweener, as a pretty big defenseman with, a little bit lack of foot speed, so to speak, uh, the hockey dream got cut off quickly after my grade 11 season. So sitting there as a 15-year-old, after hockey's been your life, and you wonder, I really like basketball. I really like volleyball. I like rugby. It was okay. Physical part was there. Um, so I didn't really know where I was going next with sport, thinking that I was a good enough athlete to continue on something. So a good friend of mine was the quarterback of the team, and he hurt his knee one summer. And next thing you know, I'm going into my grade 12 year, filling in as quarterback. So that's kind of a interesting place to be, where I had a good arm, I was agile, I was smart athlete. I think I could fill in where I could. So picking up the ball that summer, throwing it with my other friends, going, "Hey man, like we need you out as quarterback." And next thing you know, I'm training with a couple pylons, in July, saying, let's do this. So placing my now attention on that goal, putting on the huge, 2000s shoulder pads and the big helmet, going like, I don't really know how to do this. Like I'm used to hockey. So quickly adapting into that role and learning about what a cadence is, the whole first practice of my football career, going, no, I don't know what that is. So that, taking the snap and saying down set hut was my first football experience. So, yeah, I don't know where I kind of went off on this, but my football journey, started very late in a typical athlete's life, considering kids in the U.S. start playing, the similar age groups that hockey does. So
Mhm.
from that, playing a grade 12 season and then a grade 13 season, and then earning a scholarship to university, I had a very kind of burst of acceleration in my new athletic career, which eventually took me to the place I am today. So being grateful for that, that hockey got, cut off very quickly, and then refocusing my attention on a new sport, and then being able to perform that sport at a very high level, and having people and leaders trust me and believe in me was something that I'll be forever grateful for. My high school coaches, my summer football coaches at the Durham Dolphins, and then my university career. I couldn't have asked for a better path. Although in the moment you feel doubt, you feel worry, you feel anxious, you feel you're not good enough. But looking back, it brings you to the place you are now, today.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. I appreciate you being so honest and so open, so transparent with the journey, and it was interesting, like hearing you share, that idea of like resiliency, really had this vision of, the game plan, right? You thought was hockey and it got, just wasn't your journey, right? It just wasn't meant for you. And here you are as a grade 11, as a 15-year-old, sort of having to sort of create a new vision for yourself, right? Like what could this be? So it's interesting how that ability to kind of dig your heels in. I think that that's a quality of every, high quality athlete, is that ability to dig your heels in and go, okay, what's next? This wasn't where we thought we were going to go. What's next? I'm curious from your perspective, that ability to focus on next play, right? That sort of next play mentality. Was that something that a great coach, a teacher, a mentor, a parent sort of instilled in you? But so where did that sort of ability to sort of refocus on the next play, that resiliency, where did that come from? I'm curious from your perspective.
Um, Probably in my university career in terms of football, just because looking back at the blur of the 2 years of being introduced to football, next thing you know, you're going to recruiting camps and recruiting visits and fall football at high school and then training and then spring football. Like the 2 year block of that, I had great coaches, and I want to emphasize the importance of the multi-sport athlete and the coaches I had that weren't from football that really led me to where I am. Because now as an adult looking back, um, Coach Kiriakou was a volleyball coach at our high school, and he ran the volleyball program there, very high performance, and he took me on as a grade 9 to play senior volleyball at the high school level. So looking back at that, um, yes, I was a project as a grade 9, and he wanted to introduce me to kind of what more physical grade 11s and 12s were like seniors. So learning how to train and how to practice, and volleyball practice was at 5 a.m. at the high school, and you're doing plyometrics and jumping over things and diving on the hard floor. And yes, it's not, the typical story of football, but that that in my early high school year was like, okay, like this is how people train for whatever sport it is. And I love volleyball, but I was excited to get to basketball season and to get to hockey season. So looking back at the leadership through our athletic department at Uxbridge Secondary School, um, we had a lot of great coaches that took kids under their wing, whether whatever sport it may be, or whether it be in the hallway at lunchtime. There was an effort towards creating excellent kids and
Mhm.
excellent athletes. So that's where I kind of transition now. Well, transition into my coaching career of trying to replicate that and be there for kids, and be that mentor for any sport or any type of kid at any level. So that's something I really don't take for granted now, looking back at how um, my high school career went.
Mhm. It's interesting as you share that, because I know as we've had more conversation, as we've connected on a deeper level, I was thinking back to, obviously we have men, a few other mutual connections that are near and dear to heart. But I think back to another fellow Uxbridge Tiger, Jeff Keeping, right? Same idea, where it was interesting that, similar to his journey, here's a multi-sport athlete, right? And literally gets his shot with the Argos because he has a willingness to embrace new opportunities. He's played many different sports at a high level, and just that willingness to take on new challenges and embrace the discomfort, right? Like it's funny how that parlayed itself into a long career in the professional level, right? So it's interesting. Do you think part of that was having those great coaches and mentors at the high school level that just essentially wanted to use sport as a vehicle, right, to teach you about how to be a great human being?
Yeah, totally. Like Jeff was someone that came back to our high school, and you go, oh my God, this guy won a great, or is in the CFL and was about to win a Grey Cup. And this massive human is, giving his time back to the school and meeting like someone like me who goes, hey man, like I just started football, like nice to meet you. That's the type of person I was, you know, you know, being a quarterback, the leadership role. It's like, lead the team and try to meet people and be that presence. So having him come back was something special. And I remember that he helped with a charity event we were running, and the connections between the high school and former athletes was huge. And obviously it is at the university level, but um, something we did every week, I'll just bring this back up with the coach player connection, is it was called SAQs. It was every Wednesday, and it was this intense 45-minute to an hour like circuit training of footwork and agility and speed, agility, quickness. And 90% of the kids hated it because it was, you're going through each station, and then next thing you know, you're in grade 10 and the level kind of picks up a little bit in gym class, and then you kind of go into your high performance weightlifting classes, and it was this entire community of kids in all ages working out with the loudest music possible. And we have our teachers in there who are all coaches in the drills with us, like showing us how to do the high steps over the cone, and then they're sprinting back, and kind of creating that mentality of not just hard work but the intensity it takes, and kind of leading by example. And classic high school coach sweating all over the floor, and like getting on people, like getting on his top athletes, like, hey, get in the line, like this is extra training for you. And again, kids didn't like it, but the athletes were into it. And we saw our rugby coach in our line, like going hard and showing us how to do it and getting on our butts. So that was, looking back now, like that's such a cool environment that I wish I have as an adult now, that to like kind of, whether it was the gym teachers trying to get a quick workout in or not, it was like, wow, our hockey coach or our football coach, volleyball coach is like on our other athletes, kind of in this group atmosphere. So something, looking back, whether the technique was there or not, or whatever it was, like that didn't matter. Looking back, it was kind of this group effort environment of that kind of translates into football, actually, like when you have your team workouts. So looking back at that, that was a really cool experience that kind of brought a lot of that team building aspect into my life now. So, but yes, the leaders, that's a great example that I can share about that.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, right? And I think of kind of how you're serving in your role now as a community engagement specialist, right? And that idea of like, how do you create this sense of community? How do you create this greater sense of belonging, right? This, in sport, we talk about family, we talk about, but it's really, how do you bring people together? And it's interesting how you mentioned these sort of formative memories of coaches that were teaching you this idea of like, this cliche and personal growth and self-development talks about how you do anything is how you do everything, right? Like, how do you go about your business in a SAQ, right? Like, running back to line, touching the line, giving your best effort and attitude to things, right? It's funny how those simple lessons years ago have created this strong foundation for you to be even more effective in your role building community now.
Yeah, and those are all the positive things that we want our youth and our community to grow into.
Yeah.
But finding, I don't want to bring up the challenges part, but to find the ability to find other good leaders to help share that vision is something that we're trying to do. So, um, yeah, there's a lot of challenges, and then the positive outlook is, having kids come back to you, that recognize you, that say, "Hey, coach, thank you for what you've done." Like that is the ultimate reward, the personal selfish, or not selfish, but um, the personal reward you get out of it, whether it was a kid you loved or had issues with, or you see them now have a job or go on to university. Like following your kind of path, or following your player's path, is a huge part of it. And the community part, we've gone through a lot of challenges in the last 5 years of getting out and doing things. And I think we're on our way back
Yeah.
towards that now. But we do have a generation of kids that were inside for 2 or 3 years,
Yeah.
and now they're in the prime position, I'd say, from ages 11 to 16 or whatever it may be, that are now in this going into high school role and face a lot of different challenges that we faced. So trying to bring that attitude back and trying to show the way of some kids that have gone through some difficult part of their adolescence is, I think, through sport is a really special thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you bring up an interesting idea, right? And like you, I'm someone who tries to focus on the change that's possible, right? Like on the road ahead. But it's interesting that, along my journey, I've realized that it's also as important to acknowledge some of the challenges we're facing right now, right? Because in order to create change, you got to be able to change what isn't working now. So I guess I'm curious from your perspective, because why I think your input is super valuable is you're a high quality athlete, you've been a high quality coach, and now you see it from an administrator level, right? In terms of someone who's a steward of the game that just wants to grow it. What do you see right now as being a challenge, but also acknowledging the fact that football to a degree there's so much growth opportunity, right? Especially now as we see like with flag football being part of that 2020, like the interest and demand for football is growing. So I'm curious, like, what do you see as being a challenge right now that is we'll say a low hanging fruit of something we just need to be more aware of, but we need to find solutions for.
Yeah, I think it starts with our grassroots programming where coaches, volunteers, referees, administrators have been doing it for a long time, which is we're very thankful for. But bringing on new talent and bringing on new volunteers in this day and age is a challenging one, right? Like having coaches now give 4 or 5 nights a week to a program and weekends. And this day and age, it's a little bit harder to do, finding that time to volunteer. Um, you know, if you have a son or daughter playing, that's kind of the natural progression of people getting involved. And then you have your kind of your longer term volunteers that run the program for a long period of time. But once they get to a certain age, you know, to be able to pass that down and continue your program or continue your league is something I think we'll be facing very soon. Also, uh, that can be also related to referees in all sports, but especially in football, where our referees in our 50s and 60s and 70s are now retiring. That's something really important that we need to bring in the youth to fill those roles now in flag, like you said. Uh, with flag taking a huge step where it's more accessible for kids to play, that means more games and more leagues and more participants. Well, yes, in a perfect world, we want everyone to play and have all these teams and leagues, but it takes a lot of effort and energy for volunteers to organize that. And that's something now that I appreciate from that side of sport. That's very important because it really does rely on that one person answering emails at 8 o'clock at night to really keep things going. Um, I've been a football coach, a head coach of a high school program that we had to stop operating, not due to you know my abilities, but to outside factors of participation levels and players and funding. So being on that side of being the coach, showing up to practice, running my drills, being a mentor, and then also the side of your team managers you rely on and your league volunteers and your referees. Seeing that pipeline in Canada, especially in Ontario now, there are challenges. So that's where I hope to make a difference and bring more volunteers, inspire youth to be involved, and also help coach and develop some of our volunteers that are open and willing to coach that may not have as much experience.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate you sharing that. And that's definitely something, I think as someone who's serving an administration role now, I look at it as, do you think it's more this idea of just opening people's minds to there's a like if we take a look at long-term athlete development, like the whole idea is keeping people active in sport and physical activity for as long as we can. And we can talk probably just for an hour just about the benefits there from a terms of physical, mental, social, emotional well-being. But the longer we keep people involved in sport, do you think it's part of that is opening that yes, there is a pathway within coaching, you know. But one thing that I've noticed as well, it's also highlighting that there is a pathway if, maybe organizational skills are a strength. So maybe helping be a league administrator, right? Or general manager, maybe that's your pathway. Maybe, you have a passion for health and wellness. Maybe it's in a support staff, maybe it's an AT, athletic therapist role, or maybe, hey, you want to get out as a high school and you want a part-time job, you want to make some money on the side. Hey, maybe we get you your level one officiating, then you can actually maybe be in that role. Do you think that that's bit more is to maybe I don't know if you found this, but I felt like transitioning out of sport, you just think coaching's the only way to stay involved, where really there are a lot of different pathways. Do you think that that's a bit of the challenge, is just opening people's minds to different ways to stay active within sport?
Yeah, and I think it's also just awareness too, like um, being able to reach out to high schools and youth programs to say, hey, like there are opportunities, you may just not know about them. So that's part of at TYSN we're trying to do, whether it's we're looking for team photographers or social media managers or all these different things now that the sport has changed in a way. You know, you and I used to get our team preview magazine that came out where coach picked a few players um, to be on the poster with a photo shoot. Well, now that's a little bit more prominent nowadays with all levels of football, which has its pros and cons, but it's great kind of advertising for recruitment. But there are opportunities for people to showcase some of their skills. There's always the classic high school manager or a few kids here and there, but there definitely are opportunities and new kind of pathways now that we can get kids involved that are passionate about sports,
Mhm.
or parents also, and volunteers. So, um, and having to show the people the ability that the sport is changing
Mhm.
from administrative side, and there are different ways to do things now to kind of keep up with what young people are looking for. I think that's important too because there's a lot of programs that kind of just copy and paste and run the same thing over and over again,
Mhm.
and showing them the different tools and opportunities that can kind of take your sport to the next level is important. But there is a bandwidth, I think, with um, just how much people can volunteer and give their time. Um, is a challenge because coming from high level sport, I'm wanting to take the next big step and the next big project where, you know, going back to patience and resilience, like reminding myself that there's people putting a lot of time and energy into this, but to add a new project, to add a new software, to add a new, you know, way to be more efficient, you have to be patient with these things and try to build them a little bit slower than you think they'll happen. So again, reminding myself some of those things is super important. But there are a lot of cool things out there that we're really looking to showcase this fall.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, like as you share that, right? Like again, like most highly effective leaders, right? Ambition and drive, right? Open-mindedness, those are foundational qualities. But part of that with that, part of the other side of the coin is it's learning to harness that ambition and drive, right? Like, you know, things take time to change, right? But it's interesting as I think about kind of the success that we had with the OSFL Summer Cup a few weeks ago in Waterloo. Like you think about all of the people that had a hand and all of the roles and responsibilities, all those great leaders coming together, whether it was TYSN, whether it was the Waterloo Junior Warriors, whether it was, the big Warriors, whether it's OSFL executive, whether it's the officials, whether it's parents, like think of all the people that had a special part just to put that weekend together. Like it's really interesting that how if we really strip it down and we provide some, if we invite people to be a part and find maybe that one opportunity for them to use their, skill set, it's interesting how that really creates a meaningful, big experience.
Yeah, yeah, that was a great event, and it all starts with a football field and a ball, and then it just works its way out. And for a 14-year-old to have a live streamed YouTube championship game with the announcers and the highlights and the instant replay, I mean, that's so cool for young kids.
Yeah.
It's so cool for Football Ontario to have that as a really special event that, the first thing I did when I was driving home, the 7-hour drive home, was like, how can we make this better next year? Like, because it is a special opportunity for the kids and for the league that, we're thinking of the next thing that we can do to help showcase that. And with Football Ontario's leadership also, like it was an official event. Like we had the big openings, we had the national anthem, we had the trophy ceremony. Like that's a big deal, and I think that's a huge step for football in Canada to showcase what we're about. Especially when you see kind of the Friday Night Lights of the States. We're a few miles away from that, but I think to take those steps into, football is serious here. We have a lot of really good coaches, and we have a very high level league that we can showcase.
Mhm.
It's a big step versus, back when we were playing. I played a championship game at Ivor Wynn in Hamilton, and that, whether there was media coverage or recruiters or live streaming, then there wasn't. It was still a huge deal just to be part of an atmosphere like that. So to build that out and um, to have all the people involved there, like you said, volunteers at Waterloo Junior Warriors, like that's an entire project added onto your plate, whether you're a parent or
Yeah.
um, a coach. So thank your administrators and coaches,
Yeah.
and that's something that we've always reminded our players, and as a former coach. But you don't necessarily see it until you do, but to appreciate them is super important. Say thank you and to shake their hand and look them in the eyes, something that I try to tell all my kids.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, right? Like as you share that, we talk about, hey, we all, regardless of what your role is here, we're all here because football, we're just talking, obviously that's our connection, right? From a sport, is someone provided us a great experience, right? So it's always this idea of like aspiring to like how can we create this culture of appreciation like you talked about, right? Like how much does it cost us to say, you know what, thank you, I appreciate you, and just letting people know why you appreciate them, right? Maybe it's, hey, you know what, we really appreciate you, hey, for filling the water bottle, right? Like just catching someone doing something great and just letting them know, hey, I see you, I hear you, I appreciate you. Like it's really doesn't cost us anything, but it just allows people to feel seen, feel heard, feel appreciated, and that's more likely to get people to come back and want to actually give their time and energy.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking now, like, those are the things that you break the huddle with, like at practice as a coach, at whatever age group, whether it's youth, high school, summer football, or even university. Like, those are the little things that coaches harp on, and sometimes you listen, sometimes you don't. But I think that making that connection to players, like, you'll see those players come back into your life some way or another,
Mhm.
and and those are huge. Like, there's so many things that go into a football game
Mhm.
that people don't see. So that's definitely something that all the little life lessons are starting to kind of come back and cycle back into our adult life. And
Yeah.
um, it is a lot of hard work and energy, but it is worth it to put on something and share kind of whatever extent it may be, um, something special for kids. So like TYSN asked me to be the color commentator for the live stream, and I had never done that before. Uh, but I was pumped. Like I did the research. I had the big whiteboard with the rosters on it. I had interviewed coaches pre-game. I had making calls before the week before. So kind of going all in on that was really special. Whether I could give a shout out to a kid or
Mm,
whether Team Ontario participants that won the gold this summer.
mm,
Um, just being involved in the football community is something that I gave everything. So I'm very proud of that.
yeah. Well, we appreciate, and again, I know from the feedback we've heard, those little, like you said, the attention to detail, which really kicked off our conversation, right? Like paying attention to those details, like they matter, right? Like when you acknowledge someone, we talked about with your presence by giving them your full, energy. It's interesting how that's something that we often don't do enough of in today's very busy, technology driven, screen driven world, right? So I'm curious, we've been talking a little bit about challenges and then again, kind of segues to some of the opportunities. From your perspective, you've been in this role a few months. What do you see? Like, where do you want to see this thing? We're having this conversation a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now. Kind of what would you like to see happen next as a way to grow our beautiful game and help just share some of these inherent life lessons with others?
That's a good question. It's, you know, to create change, I think people need to be open to changing themselves. And that's not, I'm not saying this in a critical way of we need, you need to change JT or else nothing will change. But that's something I've learned recently, and nothing changes until you change your energy. And that's something that I kind of remind myself of that. Um, because you can't just expect football to be, with the marching band and all that, like next year. That's something like my vision is to be closer to people that do it really, really well, to emulate that. And
Mhm.
I think there are some challenges in Canada, like CFL versus NFL, that whole debate, but having high quality football with high quality coaching and high quality athletes is a pretty big goal, I'd say, for something like the Ontario Summer Football League. Um, so where do I see it in 3 to 5 years? I think it takes a lot of change and effort and time by people like yourself and Football Ontario to listen to eager people and eager leaders that want to create change. I think that's super important. Um, Doing things the way you did them last year is just going to create the same result. So innovation and change and growth is the ultimate goal. But for example, like something super small that I did a segment on for TYSN on Instagram was the headset communication, for example. So this headset communication is just a little radio that velcros into the ear of the helmet, and the coach has a walkie-talkie and he can relay information to his quarterback or to his defensive back or linebacker. Like when you see in the NFL, you see the quarterback listening on the play, he's got the green sticker and something like that. I've been thinking about that for 10 plus years as being involved in football. Like, why are we spending all of our pregame, all of our week, like going over different signals, you know, um, having a whole other communication aspect added to the game where this one simple innovation, I think, is going to change the way quarterbacks develop. Um, my coach being able to call in the play with words over and I can hear him directly eliminates any confusion on was this strong or weak or left or right or green or blue or up or down,
Mhm.
um, which for an 11-year-old quarterback that has a lot of skills and potentials, but struggles to like see the signals, like he's not going to have a very effective play. He
Mhm.
may not have a very effective series, and he may not have an effective half in a game in a season, and that kind of domino effect. I'm really excited to see the outcomes of this in 3 to 5 years, where something super simple like quarterback play is the reason why football goes where it goes, and
Mhm.
that's you can see that in the States. You can see in the NFL all they talk about is the quarterback. Well, every player is equal, but in football, the quarterback does kind of simulate how your game will go, and
Mhm.
person with the ball, the point guard, whatever it may be, is a really important position. That's why there's only one of them. So long story long, like that innovation this year, the first year of coaches being able to relay the play in, is something super important that may not be like a very big deal to people that are just getting into the sport or some volunteers or coaches. But from pure quarterback perspective, if the quarterback takes football where it goes, that is a huge step.
Mhm.
Um, and I think it's really important and will save a lot of time, and it'll save a lot of miscommunication, and I think we'll be able to play a little bit faster, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah, no, and I think it's a great way to sort of end our conversation today. Is this is just the power of like diversity of thought is what it really, Kieran, you talk about is that openness to, like we talked about at the start, like the mind works best when it's wide open, like a parachute, right? And just being open to diversity of thought, diversity of perspective. It's interesting how life infinitely gets better when you're open to different thoughts, different opinions, different perspectives, right? You don't have to agree. We can agree, disagree,
Totally.
just be
Yeah,
open.
totally. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm curious, Shane, again, TYSN's up to lots of new and, innovative ideas of how we can make this experience even bigger, better, faster. If anyone's interested in learning more about what you're helping to grow at TYSN, where can our listeners, where can our community start to learn more about some of the fun and new things coming out?
Yeah. Check out TYSN. It's the Youth Sports Network,
Mhm.
similar to TSN, but it's for the young people. We're doing a lot of different things. Um, this past summer, we did the social media for the OSFL. We did power rankings. We did standings. We did all that kind of social engagement online, which creates a lot of enthusiasm for the league. So that's kind of one pillar that we work on. We work on a different section, the live streaming content. We have a lot of experience in hosting and broadcasting games for, we're now branching off into all sports. And another pillar we're working on is the involvement of volunteers and youth into things like refereeing, into social media management, kind of helping the different sport organizations um, with what they need to do to run effectively. So funneling people into that. So if you're looking to get involved in any way, we'd love to kind of share um, our thoughts and how to guide you that way. So being involved with Youth Ottawa also is something. We're based out of Ottawa, Ontario. So that's our kind of main hub right now, which leads into our fourth pillar is the fundraising aspect. We understand that it all starts with money, to keep costs low and to keep people involved and engaged at a fair price. It takes a lot of money to operate equipment, field rentals, any of the other administrator fees. If you're trying to grow the sport, it takes some money now to do that. So we're going to be running a community sport raffle in the greater Ottawa area this fall. So getting all sports, volleyball, football, ringette, basketball, soccer. We're very excited for that, and uh, it's going to be a Ottawa-wide raffle where we can help give all proceeds back to the clubs. So
Mm.
keep your eye out on that. We did one this summer with the OSFL, and we had a lucky winner win a 50-50 of $107,000, which we'll promote a little bit more and share our story about that. But all proceeds going back to each club. So we're excited to hand some checks back to some football clubs for somewhat upwards over $15,000 for some. So we're looking to raise money and help kind of keep the momentum going on the fundraising aspect for youth sport, which has a lot of challenges. The cookie drives and the bottle drives, are effective, but we're looking to innovate and try to help grow and keep time and effort at a minimum for volunteer administrators. So that's a long-winded version of TYSN, but we're trying to do a lot of great things here with youth sport.
Absolutely, brother. And be happy to share the handle across all the socials so people can learn and follow along and, hopefully get involved with some of these great community initiatives. Brother, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you. I want to acknowledge you for the great man you are, the great partner you are, the great dad you are, teacher, coach, mentor, but more importantly, the amazing human being you are. The one thing I've really come to appreciate about since getting to know you is just your commitment to bringing people together, right? And I know from some of the things that we've been working on together, change can feel very slow at times. It can feel like proverbial watching paint dry. But I want to acknowledge you for having the courage to lead the change by example. And I'm just so enthused to see where this goes. And I'm really enthused to walk alongside of you on this.
Well, thank you, JT. I appreciate your time, and I love what you're doing with this podcast and recordings. I think it's really important to share the stories, and I'm blessed and honored to be on this with all the different great coaches and football people and leadership people that you have on. I think it's really important to hear their stories, and thank you for your time also.
Absolutely, brother. So, folks, Shane dropped so many valuable nuggets of wisdom that will not only help you succeed in sport, but more importantly, in the game of life. But as I like to remind you every week in the huddle, knowledge is potential power. It's a consistent and focused application of great knowledge that actually helps you to create greater results in your life. So, my challenge to you is to take one of these valuable nuggets of wisdom and go apply it to your life today. And as I like to remind you every week in the huddle, you are deserving of greatness. You are worthy of greatness. You are greatness. And my only ask from these conversations, if it resonated with you, if it touched your heart, then please share it with a friend, a loved one, a teammate, just anyone you think that would benefit from listening to these positive, inspiring, and empowering ideas. The more people we have listening, understanding, and applying these simple principles to their life, the more blessed this world will be. As always, love having these conversations with you in the huddle. Have a blessed rest of your day.